Hello and welcome to MalMakes. Today we're painting Los Santos from GTA 5. This is the full version. If you're interested in the time-lapse, you can click on the card here. Otherwise, let's get started. Having played a lot of GTA 5 and visited Los Angeles, which is what Los Santos is based on, I really like the scenery. I think it's really cool, and I think it's really cool how they kept it so similar to its real-life counterpart of LA. So I sketched out kind of what I wanted to do. Now, the pier is very iconic in Los Angeles, in Santa Monica, but also in the game, especially for my group, we always kind of just end up at the pier. So I really wanted to include it, and I think it looks best at nighttime where all the lights are on the roller coaster and the Ferris wheel. So I want to include kind of three things that are iconic to Los Santos. And it's the Vinewood sign kind of back here, the pier itself here in the foreground, and then just the downtown area, which I've put over to the right. Now I've had to kind of fudge a little bit where things are going to go to make the composition correct, but I'm trying to still keep them true to where they are in-game and in real life. So I'm going to be doing this at night, and I'm going to fill in my sky first with a dark blue color and kind of fade it as it gets lighter towards the bottom. Because all of the streetlights in the city kind of give a glow from the ground up, it's going to be a bit lighter down there. Even though I said I was doing the sky first, I kind of want to block in where things are going to give myself an idea of what's going to be water, kind of where the buildings are going, and then how much is going to be sky. I drew everything in, and then the one change I made was I kind of just dropped everything on the pier down a little bit. So instead of kind of sitting here with its line, I just dropped it and dropped everything on it down. It was really competing with some of this other stuff, so I kind of tucked it back in there and hid it a little bit more. And it's going to stand out because of all the lights on it, so I'm not worried about that. But if it's kind of up here, it's just really big and important when I kind of want it to be a little bit more on the same level as the other things. For my sky, I've mixed up more of a dark blue color, and it reminds me of dark blue jeans. I took cyan with a little bit of orange, and then I added a little bit of black to it just to make it darker. And then I'm going to fade it into a lighter version of this where I just added some titanium white. That way it just gets a little bit lighter, just to kind of give it a little bit of glow behind the city here. And that way when I do the buildings in solid black later, you'll see them against this light blue. Before this completely dries, I'm just going to take this stencil brush and a little bit of this lighter blue and start to block in some clouds. And then I'll just add a little bit more white to it just to lighten it up where I want the highlights to be. I started to bring in these clouds, and I kind of like it better as a clear sky. So I'm just going to repaint this in and maybe just do a little bit more streakiness of the light color down here to kind of be some really far away clouds. I tried to leave this sky a little bit streakier than the last one, and I really like how it turned out. It kind of looks like it's lighting up underneath, and it has this glow from where the city is going. The water I want to be black gesso, just to kind of bring it down so I don't have any of this canvas showing through. That's alright for up here because I have this light blue, but I want the water to kind of have this dark base, so I'm going to start with black gesso for it. I redrew in the city with chalk, and now I'm going to mark it in with black with a liquid acrylic. And I'm going to use a ruler just to make sure my lines are all vertical, they're perfectly up and down, because I don't want my buildings looking like they're going to fall over. So as I draw those lines in, I'm just going to do all the vertical ones first, and then once that's dry I can do the horizontal ones and then just kind of fill in the center pieces. There's so many streetlights that they all kind of cast a glow up from kind of the bottom here on top of these buildings. Now some of them do have some other colors, like one of these over here is going to be a little bit more green, and then there's going to be a little bit more pink on one of these. But for the most part, that glow is pretty yellow because the streetlights are really yellow in GTA, and also in most cities, it's just kind of starting to change over to more LED and blue lights. So what I've done is I've mixed up more of a gold color here with some yellow ochre, a little bit of primary yellow, and titanium white just to lighten it up. And then I've mixed some glazing liquid in it, and then I'm just taking a little bit of that and putting it over the buildings, starting at the bottom so it's more concentrated down there, and then just kind of brushing it upwards, letting it feather naturally into the black, just to make it look like it's glowing from the bottom up. I'm also going to take just a little bit of blue and kind of do the reverse of what I did here, just to give these a little bit of difference from like the other half, especially the ones that are kind of on an angle. So I'm just using some Prussian blue with a little bit of the glazing liquid, and I'm just going to add that to some of the tops of these buildings just to make them a little bit more blue. I continue to add these buildings in, just filling in black first, doing the glow from the street light, and then doing another layer and another layer. The beachfront buildings I've left solid black. I don't want a whole lot of glow on there because there are these street lights that sit kind of on the beach and cast a cone of light down onto the beach, but I'm not there yet. I want to work on all of the Faraway stuff first and get that done before I worry about this little stuff down here. So the next thing I want to do is work on the lights of all these Faraway buildings. And I'm taking all of my buildings that are drawn in 2-point perspective, like this tall one right here, and I'm starting by marking in the roof line. This one has 3 parts, so I'll block in each one. And then I'm kind of figuring out where each of the floors would go, the angle of how they go back in space. Now, towards the tops of the buildings, especially the taller they are, it's going to follow the roof line, and then this one follows the roof line, and then very slowly they're going to get more and more horizontal. Just because if I had my vanishing point out here, these lines would go to that vanishing point, so they're more horizontal the closer they get down to my horizon line. I'm doing all the white lights first, so I'm just going to use this white marker and kind of fill in where all of the white lights are going to go. And then I'll switch to gold and kind of do some of the gold lights, and there's some red lights, and just kind of fill everything in that way. That way I don't have to jump back and forth between everything. I just do everything with one, and then the next, and then the next, and just go through every color in succession. The trick to doing these windows is to keep it random, just changing up the shape, the size, how many lights are on in a building. Some of them are lit up a bit more than others. changing the scale, like faraway buildings have small lights and close-up buildings have bigger lights. But they're all done except this one right here. I thought that I needed to bring this line out, so I just repainted this part, and then I'll have to fill in the tall building. But what I'm working on right now is adding in some of the color. A lot of the lights are quite gold, and these are all like a gray, so I'm going to go on top of them with a gold, and then some of them are red, just to kind of be beacons, so things don't fly into them at night and they know they're there, like on top of this radio tower. I painted the Vinewood sign in white first, and I'm just going to take some transparent black, and this is shading gray, and just kind of darken up the tips of all of these letters towards the top. Just because the lights on these kind of start from the bottom and point upwards, the brightest part is at the bottom of each of the letters, and then it fades closer to the top it gets. I put in these gold lights, and I just painted over some of the white ones with that gold color. And then I kind of filled in some light in between these buildings because I felt like it should be brighter there and you should kind of see some stuff. So I'm kind of thinking of them like traffic lights, car lights, like the front and the backs of cars. And I also marked in where I want all of these palm trees to go. Now, where I live in South Carolina, our palm trees are pretty short. They get maybe a little taller than like a single-story building, but the ones in California get like monstrously tall. So that's why these are going to be a lot taller than some of these two-story buildings. I kind of wanted them to be able to sit up into this space, but I thought that looked a little bit ridiculous, so I just made them just a little bit smaller than that. And I'm just going to use the liquid black to fill them in, and I'm going to kind of just start with the center and just kind of bring in some pieces that stick out. And then I'm just going to bring the trunk down to the beach. I took off the tape for the water line, and then I put a new piece above it to protect the beach and everything I've done up here. Now I'm going to block in the water with some color. I'm going to start with some deeper blues and even keep some of this black down here, fade into more of a navy like this blue here, and then just right along the shore it'll have some more of this light blue. Now, I actually loaded up GTA and went to this location on a jet ski to kind of get some reference ideas to see what buildings you could see, kind of the placement of some things. But I noticed the waves were really choppy, and I want these to be really choppy just like they are in the game off the coast here. So I'm taking this lightest blue color I have and using some glazing liquid to make it just a little bit more transparent and a bit easier to flow off the brush. And I'm just going to kind of make some of these like happy face marks so they kind of curve up, and then I'm just going to kind of build those to make some waves, and they're going to get smaller the closer to this tape line they are. There's a few other things to do on the rest of the painting, but the majority is sitting here with the pier yet, and that's the last big thing I need to work on. Now these supports are kind of a pain to do because they all go to a V, and they all go in 1 point perspective down to this dot here. and I started to fill them in and drawing them in chalk, but there's just a lot of them. And because it's nighttime and that's going to be underneath the pier where there are no lights, you won't be able to see a whole lot of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to block in a big chunk of this solid carbon black just to fill it in. And then after that dries, I can do the chalk on top like I was doing, and then I can just paint the highlights. I don't have to paint every single support and then every highlight, because you're not going to see them all anyway. They're all way too dark to see the millions of them that are there. I also did a little bit of a railing here on the top, and then I can start to work on some of these things up here, which I'm also going to just block in black first and then do highlights and then do the lights that are on the roller coaster and the Ferris wheel. This worked out pretty good. After I filled in the dark part, I just did my chalk lines to do all of these angled supports, and then I did kind of like the same color I did with that beach, that grayish purple muted color, and I put that as a highlight on some of these front ones, and then just a couple of the back ones, you can kind of see them in there. And then I even mixed a little bit more white and just did the front ones with that extra highlight. And then you can kind of see where the black rectangle I filled in and the water met back there underneath this pier. So I took a little bit of shading gray, which is just carbon black with some glazing liquid, and then I kind of just blended it underneath here just to make it darker underneath the pier where those waves are. And there will be some more touch up yet, like just bringing a little bit of the waves up on top of these supports so they're not just stopped right there in the water, but I'm going to let this dry for now and start working on this part. I'm going to erase what I've done up here for chalk and then just redraw it and make sure it's perfect, and then we'll block it in solid black. To do the Ferris wheel, I started by drawing two circles, kind of like a Venn diagram where the center point is like really, really big and they only have a little bit on the left and the right that aren't overlapped. And then for the one that I'm calling the front one, which is the left one, I marked the center point, and from there I just did a radius all the way around of all of these spokes. I started by dividing it, and then dividing that, and then dividing those 4, and then those 8, all the way down until I had that many spokes. After the black was dry, I took my chalk and drew in my spirals. Now, the Ferris wheel goes through all of these different colors. It changes, sometimes it's like one solid color, but I really liked the spiral. So I drew in the spiral, and then I started marking in the white parts of it, and then this little one is going to be yellow, but I had to do it in white first, and I'm just going to paint yellow on top. And then everything that's black in between these two spirals is going to be a teal color. So I'm going to mix up like a light blue and then just go over all of those parts with that teal. And we're done! We have Perro Pier from GTA 5. If you're interested in this piece, you could buy a poster or a phone case, or bid on this original canvas. There's links down below. Also, consider supporting me on Patreon. You can find out more at supportmel.com. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of MalMakes, and I'll see you again here for another video game painting.